Welcome to My Expat Stories. Today we hear from a software consultant from Manchester who rented a scooter to explore the mountains of northern Thailand. But one moment of distraction on a quiet road would lead him into a web of fake injuries, staged accidents, and mounting hospital bills that drained £3,000 from his account, one receipt at a time. Here's his story. I'm Daniel. I'm 41, and I handed over £3,000 to strangers who pretended a scooter accident had crippled a man who was never really injured. That's my story. Let me tell you how they did it. I work as a software consultant in Manchester, which means I spend most of my life staring at screens and fixing other people's coding mistakes. By March 2023, I was completely burned out. My girlfriend of 3 years had just left me for someone she met at her gym. My father had passed away 6 months earlier. I felt like I was sleepwalking through life. I needed to get away from everything. Thailand seemed like the obvious choice. I'd been once before in 2019, just a quick week in Bangkok with some uni friends. This time I wanted something different. I didn't want the bars or the party scene. I wanted quiet. I booked 2 weeks in Chiang Mai, found a small guest house near the old city for £20 a night. 2 weeks later I was on a plane. The first few days were exactly what I needed. I rented a scooter, which terrified me at first, but after a couple of nervous rides around quiet streets, I started to feel confident. I visited temples, ate pad thai from street vendors, spent hours in cafes drinking iced coffee and pretending to work on my laptop. Mostly I just sat there, watching people, trying to process everything that had happened in the past year. On my 4th day, I decided to ride out to Doi Suthep, the famous temple on the mountain overlooking the city, about 11 kilometres from where I was staying, mostly uphill. The views were supposed to be incredible. I set off around 9 in the morning, taking my time, stopping to take photos. The road wound through forests and small villages, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. I spent an hour at the temple, walking around, lighting incense, taking in the view of Chiang Mai spread out below like a map. Then I started the ride back down. The road was quiet. A few other tourists on scooters, some local traffic. Nothing heavy. I was being careful, staying on the left, not going too fast. I had my helmet on. I was doing everything right. About halfway down the mountain, I came around a bend and saw a motorcycle pulled over on the side of the road. Thai woman standing next to it, waving at me frantically. She looked distressed, like she needed help. I slowed down, and as I did, another scooter came shooting out of a side road to my right. I hadn't seen it coming. I swerved hard, hit the brakes too hard. My scooter skidded. I didn't crash badly, just sort of tipped over at low speed, scraped my leg, banged my elbow against the pavement. The problem was that my scooter bumped into the other scooter as I fell. Just a light collision, barely anything. But the rider, a young Thai man, went down too. He was shouting immediately, holding his leg, his face twisted in pain. The woman who'd been waving at me rushed over. Within seconds, 3 more people appeared. I still don't know where they came from. It was like they materialised out of the trees. Everyone was speaking Thai, talking fast, pointing at the man on the ground. He was clutching his ankle, groaning, rocking back and forth. I felt terrible. Even though I wasn't sure whose fault it was, I'd been the one who swerved. I'd hit him. I tried to apologise, tried to ask if he was okay, but my Thai was non-existent, and nobody seemed to speak much English. One of the men stepped forward. Older. Maybe 50. Grey hair. Kind face. He spoke a bit of English. He said his name was Wanchai, and that the injured man was his nephew, Narong. He said Narong's ankle was very bad, maybe broken. We needed to get him to a hospital right away. He said it very calmly, very reasonably. I agreed immediately. Of course we needed to get him to a hospital. I felt awful. Wanchai made a phone call. Within minutes, a blue pickup truck arrived. They loaded Narong into the back, still groaning, holding his ankle like it was about to fall off. Wanchai told me to follow them on my scooter. To the hospital. I said yes, of course, and I followed the truck back down the mountain and into the city. My heart was pounding the whole way. I kept thinking about insurance, about what this was going to cost, about whether the rental company would cover it. We arrived at a small private hospital on the outskirts of Chiang Mai. Not one of the big international hospitals I'd read about online, Smaller, older, but it looked clean enough. One chai helped Narong inside. I followed. The woman from the roadside came too. Her name, I learned, was Apina. She said she was Narong's girlfriend. She looked very worried, very upset. I felt even worse. At the reception desk, One Chai explained what had happened in rapid Thai. The nurse nodded, glanced at me with a sympathetic look, then took Narong into a treatment room. One Chai turned to me and said they'd need to do x-rays, maybe a scan, and that I'd need to pay. He said it very matter-of-factly, as if it was obvious. I asked how much. He said he didn't know yet, probably 15 or 20,000 baht. That was about £400. It seemed like a lot, but I supposed it was a private hospital, and I'd caused the accident. What else could I do? I said okay. I sat in the waiting area with One Chai and Apina for about an hour. They spoke to each other in Thai, occasionally glancing at me. I tried to look apologetic and concerned, which I genuinely was. Eventually, a doctor came out. Young, professional looking, white coat, stethoscope around his neck. He spoke decent English. He said Narong had a fractured ankle and would need a cast and possibly some physical therapy in the coming weeks. He said they'd keep him overnight for observation and that the total cost would be 28,000 baht. 28,000 baht. That was over £700. I felt my stomach drop. But what could I do? I'd caused the accident. I couldn't just leave this guy suffering. I pulled out my credit card and paid at the desk. The receptionist printed out a receipt with official-looking stamps, handed it to me with a polite smile. One Chai thanked me, shook my hand firmly, said I was a good man. Apina looked relieved, like I'd saved their lives. One Chai walked me outside after I'd paid the bill. He said Narong would be fine, that I shouldn't worry, that these things happen. He seemed very understanding, very kind. Then he said something that should have made me suspicious, but at the time I was too rattled to think clearly. He said that Narong would need follow-up appointments, more x-rays, physical therapy, and that it'd be good if I could stay in touch in case there were additional costs. He gave me his phone number and asked for mine. I gave it to him. Why wouldn't I? I'd just put the man's nephew in the hospital. I rode back to my guest house in a daze. My leg was still sore from where I'd scraped it. My elbow was bruised and swollen. I felt like an idiot. £700 gone in an afternoon. That night, I got a message on WhatsApp from One Chai. He said Narong was resting, that the doctors were taking good care of him. He thanked me again for being so responsible. I replied saying I hoped Narong would recover quickly. One Chai sent back a praying hands emoji. The next morning, I got another message. One Chai said Narong had been discharged but would need to return in 3 days for a follow-up x-ray. The cost would be another 5,000 baht. Could I help with it? I hesitated. 5,000 baht was over £100, but I'd already paid 700. What was another 100 if it helped the man recover? I said yes. 3 days later, One Chai sent me a photo of a hospital receipt for 5,000 baht. I transferred the money to his bank account through the app. He thanked me, said Narong was doing better. A week passed. I tried to enjoy the rest of my holiday, but I felt uneasy. I went to the night market, visited more temples, took a cooking class where I learned to make green curry. But the whole time my phone felt like a weight in my pocket. I was waiting for the next message. It came on day 9 of my trip. One Chai messaged again. He said Narong needed physical therapy sessions, 3 sessions a week for a month. Each session cost 2,000 baht. He sent me a photo of a treatment plan from the hospital. It looked, official. Stamps, signatures. A doctor's name printed at the bottom. He said Narong couldn't afford it. Could I help? I should have said no. I should have asked more questions. I should have demanded to see Narong in person. But I felt responsible. And One Chai had been so polite, so grateful, so understanding about the whole thing. I agreed to pay for the first 2 weeks. That was another 24,000 baht, nearly £600. I was now over £1,300 into this accident, and my holiday was almost over. On my last day in Chiang Mai, One Chai asked if we could meet for coffee. He said he wanted to thank me in person, give me an update on Narong's recovery. I agreed. We met at a cafe near the old city. One Chai arrived with Apina. They both looked very grateful, very humble, like I'd done something incredibly noble. One Chai ordered drinks for everyone and insisted on paying. He showed me more photos of Narong on his phone. In the pictures, Narong was sitting on a sofa with his leg propped up on pillows, the cast clearly visible. He looked miserable. Wanchai said Narong was a motorbike taxi driver and that he hadn't been able to work since the accident. He said Narong had a wife and a young son to support. Money was very tight. He didn't ask me for anything directly, but the implication hung in the air, like smoke. I felt terrible all over again. I asked how much Narong usually earned in a month. Wanchai said about 15,000 baht. I did some quick math. That was less than £400. I said I'd send him 10,000 baht to help with living expenses while he recovered. Wanchai looked shocked, then deeply moved. His eyes got watery. He shook my hand, thanked me repeatedly, said I was a blessing, that God had sent me. I flew back to Manchester the next day feeling conflicted. On one hand, I'd done the right thing. I'd caused an accident. I'd taken responsibility. On the other hand, I'd spent nearly £2,000 in total, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Over the next 2 months, Wanchai continued to message me. At first it was just updates. Narong was progressing well. The physical therapy was helping. He was so grateful for my support. Then the requests started again. Narong needed more medication. The pharmacy bill was 3,000 baht. Could I help? I sent the money. A week later, Narong needed another follow-up scan. 4,000 baht, I sent it. Then there was an issue with the cast. It needed to be replaced because of swelling. 5,000 baht. Every time Wanchai sent a photo of a receipt. Every time I transferred the money. I was working again, earning decent money on a contract in London. I told myself it was fine, I could afford it, but the requests kept coming, and the amounts kept adding up. By June, 3 months after the accident, I'd sent over £3,000. I started to feel sick every time my phone buzzed with a WhatsApp notification. I was lying awake at night doing mental calculations, wondering when it'd end. Then one evening I was having a drink with a mate in a pub in Manchester. His name's Rob. He's travelled all over Asia. I told him the whole story, expecting sympathy, maybe some reassurance that I'd done the right thing. Instead, Rob looked at me like I was an idiot. He said, "Daniel, you've been scammed." He said it so bluntly, so matter-of-factly, that I actually laughed. I said no, I'd seen the hospital. I'd seen the x-rays, I'd seen the receipts. Rob shook his head. He said hospital receipts in Thailand are easy to fake. He said the whole thing sounded like a setup, a staged accident designed to trap tourists into paying. I didn't want to believe him. I argued back. I said once I'd been so kind, so understanding, so grateful. Rob asked if I'd ever actually seen Narong after the accident. I said no, just in photos. Rob raised his eyebrows. He told me to Google staged accident scams in Thailand. I did. Right there in the pub on my phone. My stomach dropped. There were dozens of articles, forum posts, warnings from embassies. The scam was always the same. A distraction on the road, a minor collision, an exaggerated injury, a trip to a private hospital that was in on it, inflated bills, fake receipts, and then months of follow-up requests for more money. The victims were always foreign tourists who felt guilty and responsible. I felt like I was going to be sick. I scrolled through the articles, reading story after story that sounded almost identical to mine. The woman waving from the roadside to create a distraction, the scooter appearing out of nowhere, the immediate crowd of people, the private hospital on the outskirts of the city, the polite, grateful uncle who spoke just enough English. It was all there, like someone had written a script and they were just following it. I went home that night and looked at every receipt Wanchai sent me. I zoomed in on the photos, studied the details with the same focus I used debugging code. Some of them had the same date stamp even though they were supposedly from different visits. Some of them had doctors' signatures that looked identical, as if they'd been copied and pasted. One receipt had a phone number printed at the bottom. I Googled it. It wasn't the hospital's number. It wasn't any hospital's number. I felt like an idiot. I felt angry. I felt ashamed. I'd been so careful in every other aspect of my life. So skeptical. So analytical. And yet I'd fallen for this completely. I'd handed over £3,000 to strangers, based on nothing but guilt and a few photos. The next morning, I messaged Wanchai. I said I wanted to speak to Narong directly, on a video call, to see how he was doing. Wanchai didn't reply for 2 days. When he finally did, he said Narong was very shy and didn't speak English well, but that he'd try to arrange it. Another week passed, no video call. I messaged again, more firmly this time. One chai said Narong's phone was broken. I knew then, for certain. Robb'd been right, I'd been scammed. The accident had been staged, the hospital bills been fake or massively inflated. Narong probably didn't even exist. Or if he did, he'd never been injured. I'd been paying for nothing. I stopped replying to One Chai's messages. He sent a few more over the following weeks, asking if I was okay, saying Narong needed more money for treatment, sounding concerned like he actually cared. I ignored them all. Eventually, they stopped. I reported the whole thing to the Thai tourist police through their online portal. I sent them every receipt, every message, every piece of evidence I'd collected. They replied 2 weeks later saying they'd look into it. I never heard anything after that. I contacted my bank to see if I could reverse any of the transfers. They said it wasn't possible. The money was gone. £3,000. That's what my guilt had cost me. That's what my kindness cost me. And the worst part wasn't the money. It was the feeling of being played, of being so easily manipulated, of having my decency used against me like a weapon. I joined online forums for expats in Thailand, read through hundreds of posts about scams. I found 3 other people who described almost the exact same experience. Same area near Doi Suthep, same setup with someone waving from the roadside, same small hospital on the outskirts of Chiang Mai. One person had paid £5,000 before they realised. Another had paid $800. We compared notes, shared screenshots, tried to piece together who was behind it. One of the forum members, a British guy named Colin who lived in Chiang Mai, offered to help me investigate. He said he knew the area well, that he'd heard rumours about this scam for years, but had never been able to prove anything. He asked me to send him the name and location of the hospital. I did. 2 weeks later, Colin messaged me. He said he'd gone to the hospital and asked to see their records for a patient named Narong who'd been treated for a fractured ankle in March. The receptionist looked confused. She said they had no record of anyone by that name. Colin showed her the date I'd given him. She checked again. Nothing. He asked if they did X-rays and overnight observation for fractures. She said yes, but they definitely have a record if someone had stayed overnight. They kept meticulous records for insurance purposes. Colin then showed her one of the receipt photos One Chai'd sent me. The receptionist looked at it closely and said it wasn't one of their receipts. The format was wrong. The stamp was wrong. The doctor's name at the bottom wasn't anyone who worked there. She said it was a fake. I felt vindicated and furious at the same time. Colin said he reported it to the local police, but they told him that without more information there was nothing they could do. One Chai's phone number was probably a burner. The bank account I'd sent money to was likely opened with fake documents, or belonged to someone else entirely. The people involved had probably done this dozens of times and knew exactly how to avoid getting caught. 6 months after the accident, I got a message from an unknown number on WhatsApp, broken English. The message said, "Hello, sir. I am Narong. I am sorry for what happened. I need to talk to you." My heart started pounding. I stared at the message for a full minute before I replied. I said, "Who is this really?" The response came quickly. "I am Narong. One Chai is my uncle. I want to tell you truth." I didn't believe it. I thought it was another scam, another attempt to get money out of me. I said, "Prove it. Send me a video of yourself." 10 minutes of silence. Then a video file came through. I opened it. Young Thai man, maybe 25, sitting in what looked like a small, cramped room with peeling paint on the walls. He was nervous, fidgeting, looking away from the camera. He said, "My name is Narong. I am sorry. I was part of scam. One Chai is not my uncle. He is boss. We do this to tourists. Many times. I want to stop. I feel bad. I watched the video 3 times. He looked genuine. He looked scared." I replied, "Why are you telling me this?" He said, "Because I want out. I want to stop doing this. One Chai is angry with me. I need help." I asked him to tell me details about the accident, things that only someone who was there would know. He did. He described the bend in the road, the blue pickup truck, the name of the receptionist. He even described what I was wearing that day. Grey t-shirt, black shorts. I asked him the question I'd been wanting to ask for months. "Was the accident staged?" He replied immediately. "Yes. I pin your wave at you. I wait on side road. When you slow down, I come out. You hit me, but not hard. I pretend hurt. We do this many times. Hospital is real, but receptionist is One Chai's sister. She make fake receipts. We split money. I felt sick. I asked, "How many people have you done this to?" He said, "I do not know. Many. Maybe 50. Maybe more. One chai do this for 5 years. I asked him if he'd talked to the police. He said no. He said if he did, one chai would hurt him. He said he just wanted me to know the truth. Then he said something that made me want to throw my phone across the room. He said, "I am sorry. I need money to leave Chiang Mai. Can you help me?" I almost laughed. Even now, even after confessing, he was still asking me for money. I said no. I said, "You stole £3,000 from me. I won't give you another penny." He sent back a sad face emoji and then blocked me. I never heard from Narong or One Chai again. I never got my money back. I reported the new WhatsApp number to the Thai police. I doubt anything came of it. The whole thing just disappeared, like it had never happened. I'm 43 now, 2 years after the scam. I still travel. I went back to Thailand last year actually. Bangkok this time. Not Chiang Mai. I didn't rent a scooter. I took taxis and trains and walked everywhere. I was more careful, more suspicious, more guarded. And I hated that. I hated that they'd taken something from me I couldn't get back. Not the money, but the ability to trust, to help, to feel like doing the right thing wouldn't come back to hurt me. £3,000 is what my guilt cost me. But what bothers me more is the feeling that my kindness was weaponized, that my decency was turned into a weakness, that the very thing I thought made me a good person was the thing they exploited. That's my story. I handed over £3,000 to a professional scam crew who staged an accident and played on my guilt for months. I hope sharing this prevents someone else from doing the same. Thanks for sharing, Daniel. The staged accident scam is one of the cruelest cons in Thailand because it weaponizes decency. Daniel lost his money to people who knew exactly how to turn guilt into profit. And that's a hard lesson to swallow. This is My Thailand Stories. Stay vigilant out there.